Right. So, brothers and sisters, welcome to another of our Saturday's session. So, today's topic, as you have been informed, is on our legislative bodies and assemblies. Um, so, we have been discussing, as part of our unification of Africa conversation, different topics to do with unification, economics, and liberation broadly. And it is part of our broader mission towards African liberation and unification. And today's discussion, more or less a conversation, is going to be on Africa's legislative bodies and assemblies. We could not get a specialist speaker to speak on the topic. So we are going to speak to the topic as Africans and not necessarily as experts. So we encourage you all to share your thinking, your thoughts, your experience on the topic. So it's my absolute pleasure, therefore, to welcome you to this important and timely event on Africa's legislative bodies and assemblies and their role in shaping the continent's journey towards unity, progress, and our collective strength as Africans. So today we gather not only to reflect on the past and present, but also to envision a future where our legislative bodies serve as a backbone of Africa's unification and the advancement of Pan-African ideals, not the rubber stamps of our presidents, not collectors of bribes, and so on and so forth, but a genuine legislative body or legislative bodies that express the will of our people. So as we prepare for our discussions, I encourage each of you to engage deeply with the key questions that Brother Pigeon shared earlier. Brother Pigeon, if you'd like to share them again in the chat, that will be great. So what role do Africa's legislative bodies play in fostering unification? I do not hear very much about unification in Ghana's parliament. As you know, I'm from Ghana. I don't know about you and where you are, whether you hear our legislative bodies talking about unification of Africa. So how can our legislative assemblies address the historical and contemporary challenges facing African unity? What frameworks are needed to support the vision of Pan-Africanism, our version, not the liberal kind, not the liberal kind where only a few people will benefit, not the conservative kind where only one president, one person steals the resources and benefits only with his or her family, but the radical kind where ultimately the laws that we make promote the benefit of all our citizens. Because our people, the supreme law, that is the supreme law, is that which promotes the benefit of all our people, and not just a minority or an individual. Because their welfare, the welfare of the people, ought to be the supreme law. So at the end of the day, all our legislative bodies and assemblies must, at the end of the day, promote the welfare of our people. Our resources only go to benefit foreigners. Our resources only going to benefit people who are outside the continent, grown men and women, criminal organizations stealing our resources, and the African woman is left without the resources to even feed her child and her children. And our legislatures should address these. So what do you think are the frameworks needed to support the vision of Pan-Africanism? And how do we ensure that these bodies remain inclusive and representative of all our communities, not just some, not the communities of the president who is in office, but all the nationalities of Africa? So our journey today is one of reflection and action. And so let's explore lessons from both the successes and the shortcomings of existing legislative institutions across the continent. We saw in Kenya how our children, our brothers, were being shot, by police, around in parliament. I stand to be corrected. But as far as I know, there were shootings. People were shot. Over the actions of the legislature that is meant to serve them. So we'll seek strategies to harmonize legislative practices and identify reforms that can accelerate African economic, social, and political integration. Through our collaboration and dialogue, let's have the opportunity to lay the groundwork for transformative change. I urge you all to bring your insights, your questions, and your aspirations to the table. Let this be a space for bold ideas and thoughtful engagement. Together, let us honor the legacy of those who have championed African unity and commit themselves to building a future of solidarity, progress, and shared prosperity. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to the rich and meaningful discussions ahead. Welcome, Brother Pigeon. Let the journey begin.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. Hope you can hear me.
Hear you okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Kwame. Permit me to start off by sharing a bit of my thinking and my work a bit on this topic and some of the questions strengthening what you, and then we can have a conversation. We are looking forward to have a cross-examination, not even cross-examination, but cross-experience sharing from various parts. So we will hear to our brothers who are in the southern part of Africa, what's their parliament doing, or what is it about in regards to what Brother Kwame said, in regards to the unification of Africa. How often do we hear this? In various parts of the countries we have represented here, how do they feel about their parliament as a representative towards advancing the unification, the liberation, and the development of the people in that territorial border or so-called neo-colonial states? And basically then we have to brainstorm on what is the framework. What do we propose towards harmonization of this framework so that we can have a unified program towards the unification of Africa by the legislative bodies. Permit me to start by saying there are levels of parliaments in the continent, which is either legislative bodies. Some have what you call bicameral parliaments or legislative bodies, which is either the Senate or the upper house and the lower house. Apart from the state parliaments, the continent has also moved to regional parliaments. For example, the East African community has what you call an East African parliament. And the East African parliament, for example, which I believe the SADC has the same and maybe ECOWAS with the same, the East African parliament is made up of members who are appointed by various states that are party to that coalition or that regional bloc, who then go there to deliberate issues in regards to that region. Above that regional parliaments or assemblies, there are now what you call the Pan-African Assembly, the Pan-African Parliament, the so-called PAP, which is then a creation of African Union as a parliament that then looks at the issues and the deliberations of matters that are presented on the floor of African Union. Now, there has been various representation of parliaments, including what you call the requirements to be a parliamentarian, which majority of us know. Apart from the regional bodies, most of the state parliaments, actually members become parliamentarians through election. And these elections are done, some do it at the same time when they do the presidential elections, some do it earlier before the presidential elections. But it is a competition that has been going on within the continent, a competition in some extent that is made up of a lot of financial campaigns, and those who have the might financially will then get to the parliament. But again, we need to go back and ask ourselves why parliaments exist. We have to look back historically on our African traditional setup. We had what we call the Council of Elders. Basically, these were a group of elders from various small communities within either the clan or within the kingdom, who represent various families or small groupings within the kingdom, who could come together and actually discuss and beyond that even advise the king. Today's setup, most of parliaments across the world exist for three roles. One is legislation, so the parliaments become the body that then work on the laws, that the people who legislate and come up with laws. The second responsibility of parliaments across the globe is representation. The parliament is actually coming in through the citizens, because like in the constitution of Kenya, the constitution says that the sovereign power belongs to the people, and the people may delegate their sovereign power through representatives. So parliamentarians ought and should be the representatives of the people. And the question I'll be asking us as we do our sharing of our cross experiences, do you think the parliaments in your country is really a representation of the people? And beyond that, the third responsibility of parliaments across the globe is actually that the parliament exists to offer oversight to the government. These are the three roles: the representation of the people, the oversight of the government, and the legislation of other aspects. Now, in the aspect of legislation is very important to us as we discuss Africa unification, because we believe that in order to harmonize African issues, in order to come up with a continental framework for Africa, the legislative organs will play a critical role to come out with laws that are unifying the continent, which means it's the work of parliaments probably to help us push for borderless Africa. It's the work of parliaments across the continent probably to push for one military, one passport, or even free entry and movement. Common markets, everything else that are done in a country must pass through a parliament. If continental parliaments were to be very progressive, as Brother Kwame stated, we could have achieved a lot in regards to actually attaining the unification and the development of Africa. It has also been experienced, as Brother Kwame has said, that in some instances people do not feel that parliament play the second role of their representation. And for example, when the young generation in Kenya called the Gen Z decided to storm parliament, they were trying to take back the power that they are giving to the parliamentarians because they feel that the parliamentarians had failed them in one way or the other. Some of the parliaments across the continent have become the rubber stamp of the president or the executive. And we must also be conscious that the process in which we gain and attain parliamentarians are through political parties. These political parties, or either they're independent candidates, some of them come from the presidential party. And therefore the parliamentarians, while they get to the parliaments in various parts of the continent, tend to actually embrace and champion the interests of the president or the interests of their party leader instead of offering oversight. The oversight responsibility is not only to the oppositions in the parliament, but rather for any parliamentarians, because the parliamentarians are offering oversight to the government on behalf of the people. The Gen Z stormed the parliament. Many of them were shot in the parliamentary compound, and some were even shot inside the parliament. In legal terms, sometimes it's said that when the Gen Z broke into the parliament ought to have been dissolved because the people came and stormed it. And when you dissolve the parliament, at the beginning, probably even the government ought to have been dissolved. But that did not happen. So we see excesses of parliaments and parliaments betraying the people across the continent. How can the people keep the parliament accountable so that parliament can be liberated and parliament can have policies and laws that can actually liberate the continent? For example, in Kenya's situation, the young people stormed parliament because they felt there was a bill on finance that was pushed by IMF, which means purely a neo-colonial system. So parliament is being used to still advance neo-colonial processes and neo-colonial intentions in the continent, which means parliaments are not playing proper role to liberate the continent. So how do we come up with frameworks on how we can liberate the parliaments and liberate the country through the parliaments? These are part of few issues we want to look at. Even if you look at the method on how we get parliamentarians at African Union, the Pan-African Assembly, the Pope, is still through the neo-colonial leaders or whatever puppet leaders who then actually appoint their puppets to go and sit in those various parliaments called the Pan-African Parliament or even East African Parliament there to actually represent the interests of their presidents or interests of their appointees to those assembly rather than representing the interests of the citizens. We must say, of course, there have been some either Pan-African Parliament or East African Parliament where they discuss common monetary systems, herbal systems and traditional whatever. But then there's a gap that must be filled. We need to have progressive Pan-Africans occupying these spaces so that
Is everybody hearing what's going on?
No, I'm not.
Brother Pigeon, we can't hear you.
I thought it
I'm
was.
now back. I'm now back, Brother Kwame.
Okay, good. Continue.
Now, I was finishing by saying that we can also not say that parliaments haven't done something. As I've said, there are practices that have been done by the groups like the Brother Coco group, Brother Elder Glere group, moving to parliament and petition parliament to act on behalf of the people. These are some of the examples that are proven that people can still engage parliaments in constructive ways to attain the agenda that the people want on the Pan-African agenda. The parliament, sometimes like in Kenya, when the process of lawmaking process, there is a mandatory public participation, which means the laws that are made at certain stage, there must be public participation so that the citizens give their input to those laws. But at the end of the day, are these laws made in parliaments across the continent really geared towards unification, liberation, and development of Africa? And that's where I pause my brief presentation here. Back to you, Brother, to guide the conversation.
Yes, thank you, Brother Pigeon, for your initial presentation on the legislature broadly on Africa. Now, many of us here come from different jurisdictions, both on the continent and off the continent. So I think it would be right for us to hear from everyone in terms of what they think is going on, has gone on, should go on in their legislature. And I would therefore hand over the chairing back to Brother Pigeon, if that's okay.
Brother Kwame?
Yes, so that you can chair the next session where we hear from everyone in terms of the legislature. We have just heard from Brother Sewinhook that Parliament appears to have agreed that a 75-year-old frail woman should be president in Namibia. As we know, or some of you know, CSG is a non-ageist organization. That means we do not discriminate on the basis of age. And therefore, for us, the age of a president is not an issue as long as they can do the job. And that is why we have discussed in the past, Brother Pigeon has in the past raised the matter of the age of the presidency when someone can be president. If a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old can be the king of or the queen of a jurisdiction, why can't a 5-year-old be a president? That's for us to discuss. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that these matters have come up. And if people can vote at the age of 18, why therefore can't they be president at the age of 19 or 20 or whatever? Again, but we are discussing the legislature that sometimes rubber stamps the will of the executive. So, Brother Pigeon, I would like you to chair this next session, and let's hear from everyone. I would, on my part, coming from Ghana, would like to, if you like, Brother Pigeon, if it's okay, I would like to start with Ghana.
Brother Kwame, please go ahead.
Yes. So thank you. So I'll not be long. I'll be brief. And I am basing my brief discussion on the legislature on a book written by a seasoned journalist called Manasseh Azuri Awuni, who wrote a book just before the last elections, one by President Mahama. And the book was titled The President Ghana Never Had, The President Ghana Never Got. And so he wrote a book that details the activities of the legislature in concert with the executive and even the judiciary. And reading it is very eye-opening. I'll briefly say that the essential message from the book is that our legislatures, or the legislature in Ghana, however much it represents the will of the people, at the end of the day, it's a neo-colonial institution whose role is to rubber stamp the will of the executive. Members of the legislature have a lot of pressure on them from their constituents in terms of their needs, whether when they are sick or when they have to pay their children's school fees or whatever. And so they need money in order to, if you like, see to the welfare of their constituents. And the money that they use comes from various sources, including monies they get from the executive. And in order for a law to pass where the executive would like that law to pass, they will then give envelopes to the parliamentarians, and the envelope will include amounts of money. It could be in foreign or local currency. And these monies are meant, if you like, to facilitate the passing of the law. So the legislature is not scrutinizing the legislation and to see to what extent its neo-colonialist implications will harm the welfare of the people ultimately. And so essentially, the executive are bribing the legislature, who need money because their constituents also need money for their welfare. And so it's like a cycle of corruption. And the money that got in order to bribe the parliament institutions that want the law passed in their interest. Brother Pigeon has mentioned in Kenya, I'm sure he will, Brother Current is also here from Kenya. I'm sure they will talk about what is happening in Kenya. But you recall that Brother Pigeon made mention that an IMF representative, it appears, was in the Kenyan parliament. Now, what is the IMF representative doing in our parliament? But not only in Ghana, I'm told the IMF has a representation in our Ministry of Finance. What are neo-colonialist representatives doing in our ministries of finance? No, it's like saying that your enemy should look through your books. I mean, that is one of the stupidest policies African countries are implementing that just defies logic. How you can let your enemy, it's like saying that, I mean, can you imagine America letting Ghana look through their books before they pass laws? I mean, or Russia letting the CIA or the America look through their books, their financial books. or even the UK Parliament, the UK government. Their budget before they pass. Yet in Ghana and country after country, I'm speaking for Ghana, by the way, they let the IMF, a new colonial institution that doesn't have our interest at heart. They are just there to make sure that we remain a supplier of raw materials, that our people don't get properly fed, and so on and so forth. And that is the kind of institutions that are based in institutions that they have no business being in. I am being a bit passionate. Apologies if I'm coming across as too passionate, but I am speaking my heart in this instance. Anyway, so Manasseh Azuri Awuni's book is sobering reading. The corruption in high places. So to summarize, monies are coming from foreign institutions of all kinds to the president. The president is the chief in terms of corruption, or the presidents. They then channel the monies to the parliamentarians in brown envelopes or white envelopes, whichever is appropriate. And it's called facilitation. It's called to facilitate, but we call it bribe. That's what it is, a bribe. And then the parliamentarians, without scrutinizing legislature, pass the laws. Now, do you think such legislatures are in a position to consider policies that are in the interest of the African people? I don't think so. Brother Pigeon, I will end my observation there.
Brother Kwame,
I'll come in later and say more. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Before you go, Brother Kwame,
Yes.
if the money is coming from the West and the envelope are given to parliamentarians, does it mean that we Pan-Africans also have to put envelopes in the pockets of those parliamentarians to act on behalf of the unification, liberation, and development of Africa?
Well, there are two issues there. First of all, I don't think we should be bribing our parliamentarians because our parliamentarians, we voted them in order to carry out our will and what we want and our desires. And we pay them a salary to do the job. And since we pay them to do the job, why should we then bribe them to do the very job that we are paying them to do? We even give them all kinds of allowances. We give them money. We give them money to rent. We give them money to buy cars, to vehicles for their work. I mean, we resource them. So why should we then go ahead and bribe them again? So to answer your question, I don't think Pan-Africanists should bribe parliamentarians. That's number one. Number two, bribery itself, I don't think is right. Bribery is unlawful, is illegal. But this is the irony, is that the legislature that is meant to make laws are themselves taking bribes, and in essence themselves breaking laws. And if there is no law in the books, they are breaking moral laws. The third reason, by the Pigeon, will be that Pan-Africanists, I don't think we have the money. Even if we can bribe, do we have the money, the millions and millions and millions and millions to really bribe parliamentarians? Because then even if we were bribing them, it means
Somebody hear me?
It means we must compete. We have to compete with international organizations, and who have access to vast amounts of money. So do we think that Pan-Africanists can compete with such with them? I don't think so. So for those reasons, those and the reasons I've mentioned, I don't think we should be bribing parliamentarians to do the job that they're supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame from Ghana, giving us that. Also, Ghana Parliament is not ready for any push towards liberation and unification of Africa. Elder Glenn, you will share with us your experience, both engagement with Parliament.
The line is
Parliaments,
breaking again. I don't
and
know if it's my end.
would like to.
The line is breaking, Brother Pigeon.
Can you hear me now?
I cannot hear you.
Elder Glory, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Elder Glory, please go ahead. And unmute yourself, Elder.
Brother Glenroy, did you hear Brother Pigman asking you to unmute yourself? Brother Pigman,
You can come back and join us. Have that penalty. Sister Ida, can you hear me?
You keep breaking up. Maybe we should ask somebody else to be the other person if Brother Kwame doesn't want to be the host. Maybe Brother Carrington, if you're free.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Brother Pigeon. Yes, your line is breaking, but Brother Carrington, Brother Carrington, do you have the same challenge because you're all from the same area? Do you also have the same challenges with your network? If not, you can assist Brother Pigeon to chair in line with Sister Ida's suggestion.
Thank you very much, Brother Kwame. I am actually in the not yet back in Kenya, but yes, I'd be happy to help chair a little bit while Brother Pigeon stabilizes his network.
I can't hear what Brother Carrington said. I don't even know anyone can hear Brother Carrington, but I can hear Brother Carrington.
Okay, Brother Carrington said he's in the UK. He'll be happy to help chair while.
Oh, of course, he's in the UK. I keep forgetting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But Brother Carrington, if it's okay with you, Sister Ida.
Yes, sir.
But you could equally have
yes,
actually, can check, can't you?
Yes, Sister Ida can chair.
I
yes?
didn't offer because I don't think that I'm as good on this topic as, and I wouldn't.
You don't
like
have to be good to chair.
Up. Sorry.
No, you are just asking people to speak. That's all. And when they speak, you ask the next person to speak, and everybody should speak. Sister Chizomo, for example, would like to talk to us about Malawi and the legislature there. And Sachizuma has a lot to share with us. So that's all you have to do.
Oh, no, not a lot, not a lot. It's because until recently.
Yeah, no, hold on, Sister Chizoma. I'm not saying you should speak now. I'm just saying to Sister Ida, that we can hear from everyone.
I hear you, Brother Kwame, but if Brother Carrington says happy, can we let him? Because it's not my topic, this as such. I'm even struggling to think what I will say. So,
okay. All right, Brother Carrington, are you okay?
Yes.
To support
will try to manage as much as possible.
Brother Pigeon. Yeah. Yes. All right. Carry on, sir. Thank you.
Yes, and Brother Pigeon, if your internet comes back stable, please notify me. So that I can put you back on to chair the meeting. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. So I think we were with Brother Glenroy, and then we will go to Sir Windhoek. Thank you very much. Brother Glenroy, you can go ahead, please. Okay, Brother Glenroy is working on it. He is working on his. Let me try and mute you from my side. Let me check if I can. Yes. Yes, Brother Motau.
Yeah, I wanted to say it seems Brother Glenroy is having problem with his mic, and he just asked the question, why can't corruption be punishable by death sentence or death penalty? Thank you.
Yes, I will invite the views of other members, but I have really been thinking about this for quite a while because clearly Kenya is one of the countries that is egregiously affected by corruption in Africa. My worry is that it could be weaponized, especially in a country of multi-ethnic societies. It could be weaponized against a specific ethnicity. It could be weaponized against the opposition. It could be weaponized against people who disagree with the president and things like that. Actually, our president right now and presidents previously, this is not special to him, have weaponized anti-corruption operations, which of course do not stop at death. They stop at imprisonment or court cases. The President Ruto and Uhuru before him and Kibaki before him weaponized these anti-corruption operations against the opposition, while their own people were busy participating in corruption, but had political protection from the president. That would be my only worry, but I invite the views of other people. Sir Windhoek can begin his submission by talking about maybe corruption and then leading on to parliamentarianism in Africa. Brother Windhoek, the floor is yours. Karibu.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, and to the women of the world, special greetings.
Solidarity.
Yeah. I don't think I will touch on corruption per se, but I will just start with parliamentarianism, like you have said. I think, like in the case of Namibia, Namibia has taken a good step towards unification. It's a small step, but a step in the right direction. The OAU anthem is being sung alongside the Namibian anthem at all occasions. But they didn't go a step further than that. What I see in Africa as a problem is our municipal laws. So municipal laws, I mean the laws, the constitutions of the respective countries. For instance, the constitution of Namibia does not speak the language of liberation and African unification. So if in one or another way, our municipal laws can be streamlined in such a fashion that they start talking unification, I think we will start moving at a faster and speedy pace. And also, our constitutions, like our national constitutions, lack this language of Pan-Africanism and unification, because the parties that bring the government to power also do not speak that language. For instance, if you take in Namibia the constitution of SWAPO, which is the ruling party, it does not talk about borderless Africa, unification of Africa, Pan-Africanism, and all these terminologies are not there. So obviously, if they are not enshrined in their constitution, by extension, they will not be captured in the national constitutions. So my suggestion would be for the African Union to, for instance, pass a legislation or pass a code that would start compelling the different African states to start speaking that language. I don't know whether the African Union will be the right body to do that, or our CSG group can take that initiative, if it is possible, and start to, not to compel, but to sensitize municipalities to streamline their laws. Municipalities, I mean the national constitutional setups. That's my 5 cents for the day.
Thank you very much, Brother Windhoek. Those are very good submissions about constitutionality in Namibia, particularly with effect to Pan-Africanism. I was very interested that the AU anthem is being played in all official Namibian meetings. We Kenyans play the East African one. Hopefully we can start petitioning for maybe a small verse of the African Union anthem to be played also in Kenyan meetings. That is it is positive progress, and we must take our small wins as they come along, so that we know what we are working towards. We must pick a few fruits along the way. I was very interested in the SWAPO constitution because, as Brother Windhoek, you know, we have just buried the elder Sam Nujoma. SWAPO historically for me feels like it was born out of inter-regional collaboration in Southern Africa, right? Movements of course, in South Africa, Botswana, a bit of support from Zimbabwe, I think, and Zambia. I was very interested that SWAPO is not Pan-African, because there was a lot of collaboration with these other movements in Southern Africa, because as we know, as late as 1970, 1980, 1990, Southern Africa was still facing challenges of political decolonization. Why do you think this collaborationism reduced with time, or has it reduced with time, or is it one of the reasons SADC is a little bit stronger? What do you think?
Is it back to me?
Yes, brother. Yes, brother.
I think that collaboration has diminished a bit because of the push and pull between East and West. Namibia is divided in two. 50% supporting the West and 50% supporting the East BRICS, so to say. So other countries like Zimbabwe, who seem to be pro-BRICS 100%, and South Africa, who has now turned also to appear to be pro-BRICS 100%, would definitely influence the collaboration in the region. But overall, the collaboration between South Africa, Namibia, and Zimbabwe seems to be strong. Unlike between Namibia and Zambia, and Namibia and Botswana, but now also the collaboration between Namibia and Botswana has improved. So if Namibia can take a firm decision that they are pro BRICS and pro East, then I think the collaboration will go back as it were during the liberation struggle time.
Thank you very much, Sir Windhoek. Just one final question. How active is EFF Namibia, parliamentarily speaking?
EFF Namibia is very much in the minority, and ideologically, I don't think they are really very firm. They are trying to mimic EFF South Africa without a content understanding equal to that of EFF South Africa in regards to Pan-Africanism, African liberation, borderless Africa. So they are just following without a condensed substance of understanding, if I have to put it that way. The politicians in that movement, so to say, they are. I don't think they have understood everything. They are just like me. I don't think they have understood concepts very well. Sorry to say that.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Windhoek. That is both disappointing and funny, but thank you very much. Namibia to me feels like a little bit more thriving parliamentary democratic system, and we will go to the next one that I would choose to be a strong, thriving parliamentary system, although Brother Motau might disagree. Brother Motau, the mic is yours. Karibu.
Thanks, and good evening to everybody on the platform. Yeah, my brothers and sisters, I wanted to start with the issue of the death penalty. I think people know that during the apartheid system here in South Africa, death penalty was part of the instruments of punishment. But and I think it has been proven even in all other countries that are still practicing it. It never stops the vice that is traveling those countries wherever death penalty is applied. So when the new dispensation came under President Mandela in South Africa, the death penalty was abolished. So with all the facts that Brother Carrington, you have stipulated, it would not work to come back with the death penalty in any direction. I think the main issue is the consciousness of the people, and apparently, or in all these situations, we don't liberate ourselves mentally fully, and this is where the founding fathers of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania in South Africa said, first, we need to liberate ourselves mentally. The slave mentality that we are having, it's nullifying every effort that we want to do. And it is in tandem. We must be politically fully educated politically, because it is only people who are half-baked politicians who are still agents of slave mentality that can degenerate, especially for parliamentarians. Parliamentarians are all the highly paid servants of the people. They are chosen by the people. They are being paid by the people, but they are the most greedy people out of all these situations. In South Africa, our parliamentarians have the perks like motor allowances, they've got travel allowances, they fly, they have accommodation allowances, and all sorts of perks. But we all know what is happening. But I think the biggest challenge, especially in South Africa, in terms of parliamentarians, is the fact that our system is we vote for a party. We don't vote for an individual. And depending on which party is in the majority, that we are suffering that aspect that even legislation that is supposed to fight even things like corruption are stifled down by because party legislators will vote in parliament according to the party line. And we have seen it now recently with a typical case of President Ramaphosa, who has been accused, not only accused, but actually evidence is there that he had millions of US dollars in his seats in his house. And that thing could not be taken on by the parliamentarians. In fact, it was nullified by the ANC parliamentarians and it was dismissed from parliament. So that aspect of party being the ones that are being voted in instead of parliamentarians being voted in as individuals in the parliament, that's the system that we need to look into. But I think my biggest thrust is that in South Africa, we grew from the beginning when the African National Congress was founded. It was basically based on the fact that the unity of the African is the only way that we can have a solution. But I think with time, you can see that even the African National Congress within the country, they are far away from uniting not only themselves, but with other political parties. In fact, it is President Zuma who, after having been in power as the African National Congress leader, who never spoke about let the African political parties come together. But it is only now when he formed his MK party that he is talking this language that all the African political parties must come together in unity and we must see our struggle as part of the African continent struggle. So maybe this is the new wake-up call that is happening in South Africa. The government of the ANC has done a bit in terms of unifying Africa. We know that the seat of the Pan-African Parliament is here in Midrand in South Africa. We know that they facilitate that the running of the Parliament, Pan-African Parliament goes on. But we can see that it is not fully that the African National Congress government is pro-Pan-Africanism because even the Africa Day in most of our African countries, it's a holiday where people are educated fully about the meaning of Africa Day. But here in South Africa, it is only the government that, but it's not a holiday, that observes it, but that's it. That's where we go. And even if you take our role in SADC, well and good, we are maintaining the SADC economic group, but somewhere we are playing a lip service because the main factor that we have in the African Union and even in SADC, the non-interference into a member state affairs. You know, if you are a Pan-Africanist and you are a revolutionary that wants unity, you would not allow that another country neighboring you would be facing a situation like what you can be talking about if we talk about Swaziland. Swaziland is a complete monarchy that is corrupt, that is abusing, but no one will stand up, not even President Ramaphosa, not even anyone, and denounce Mswati, the monarch in Swaziland. So that stifles the unity of the African continent. Thanks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Brother Pigeon, we can hear you. Karibu. You can continue with the sharing.
Thank you, Brother Carrington. If you can hear me anytime I go off, please remind me. I'll be able to concentrate a bit on South Africa. Now, we are discussing parliaments with three main Pan-African objectives. They are all towards unification of Africa. They are all towards the liberation of Africa. Look, for example, there are things that need to be decolonized. Now, all of us being conscious of the status of South Africa, Brother Sam, Elder Sam, I want to ask you a bit. Do you think the South African Parliament is doing enough towards liberation of Africa, unification of Africa, or do you think what can be done? I know you say that parliamentarians are, you do election based on parties, but we also have parties who are presumed and believed to be progressive and pro-liberation. For example, the ANC,
Yeah.
the Spirit Change, the EFF. We have even the this one by Steve Biko, PAC. What is the status of them advancing or advocating for liberation and unification of Africa?
Yes, I hear you, brother Pigeon. The situation here in South Africa, those parties that we are talking about are not in power. You know, the PAC, the main political party that was founded on the basis of Pan-Africanism is the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, where I belong. But we are not in power. And we are not even influencing policy because we are a minority.
I cannot hear.
Hello?
Yes, Sam Utao, please proceed. I can hear you. Sawindo?
Right. We are the minority. We are not influencing any policy. We have one parliamentarian, at least as we speak now, we don't even have one because the only member we had is now a minister. So he's not really playing parliamentary role, basically. So, and then you talk of the EFF. The EFF is alone, and in particular the EFF, even if they are of this opinion or they've adopted this framework of Pan-Africanism, they are also not in power. But we believe they also adopted this as a form of trying to get leverage and more accepted in the continent. But if you know that the EFF say in their constitution, they are pursuing the Freedom Charter. They want to fulfill what the African National Congress has failed about the Freedom Charter. Then you will know that in essence, they will remain an organization that is framed on the basis of what the African National Congress stands for. And fundamentally, the difference of the PAC and the ANC was on this issue that South Africa cannot belong to all who live in it. Because when you do that, you are throwing completely the birthright of the African majority, and you are throwing away the policies that says then Africans must determine the way forward for Africa. And therefore, the EFF will fail the test when it comes to scrutiny, whether they are a pure Pan-Africanist movement. Steve Biko's Azapo, the same is happening. Azapo is not even anywhere in parliament. They have since been, I think, around 2019, the last election of 2019, that's what the last time they were in parliament. So those parties that are pro-Pan-Africanism, they are not in parliament, most of them, and they are not in power. So they cannot influence the policy. And the African National Congress, we are saying they are doing the minimum. You know, as I said, the Pan-African Parliament is here based in South Africa, and basically the government facilitates the ongoings of PAP. But in essence, as long as all those ruling parties or ruling organizations in these countries are not free from our past colonial masters. You know, South Africa, after liberation, everybody thought by now we would be talking of equality. But South Africa has drifted into the most unequal society. Despite that, the long-range liberation movement is in power. our people, the African majority. Right now, as we speak, and I think members are aware, the Afrikaners are almost uprising against the government. They are totally demanding. They've even gone to the step of inviting America through Donald Trump to come and intervene in South Africa. Because of what? Because of a policy where we say we want to expropriate the land, which is not what we meant by being the land question being solved in South Africa. That policy, it's not completely what we want, but the Afrikaners are already crying foul, and Trump must intervene. So you can see, and the African National Congress, having been in power for 30 years, has not come nearer in solving the land question as requested, that the land of the African people that was dispossessed by the whites must be returned back to the African majority. Okay. So halfway, the ANC has done something that they've brought democracy into the country, but far from liberation of the African majority, who are the aborigines of this continent. Thanks.
Thank you, Elder Sam, but I think you are pointing at a weakness that then have to inform our conversation further as we engage on this. And this is about there are progressive political parties in the continent, and parliaments in most of the countries are made up of political parties. Now then we have to ask ourselves, are there more same progressive political parties across the continent, like how it was during the liberation process? And second thing is, even where they exist, why can't they be in power or in parliament? Which means, does it mean that the citizenry are not conscious enough about Pan-Africanism? Because then citizens are the one who vote those people who either contest in various political positions? Or does it mean that the citizens do not feel that those members who belong to those progressive parties are not even progressive themselves? For example, some members might belong to what you call progressive political party like ANC, and they are not progressive themselves, or like EFF, and they're not progressive themselves. So I think this is also very critical as we even discuss the role of parliaments towards fighting and advancing liberation and unification of the continent. Because maybe it has failed because it doesn't have progressive parliamentarians, and progressive parliamentarians will need progressive citizenry. But with that, Brother Elder Sam, permit me to go to your neighboring country where Elder Coco or Brother Coco is also coming from. Brother Coco, you are now an elder. So please go ahead and share with us also what you see from the neighboring side as well. Then we'll be moving towards Sister Chisomo in Malawi. Brother Coco?
Wow. I feel flattered to be called an elder. That will make my brother, my big brother there, Dademutau, feel angry. Don't make my brother angry. Yes, this is interesting debate today because we are talking about legislature. So the big question is, what does legislature do? The legislature is about law making. It's about passing laws, making sure the laws are in accordance with the constitution in the country or what the country wants. But I would like to pick on something which Dademutau raised when he answered the question on the death sentence. He talked about consciousness. And by talking about consciousness, is one word, but it's actually much bigger than that once you delve into it. Consciousness is about Ubuntu, Ubuntu. And from how we were as Africans, we knew what Ubuntu was about, collective humanism. So if someone had done a crime in Africa in those days, there were ways, there were tools in which our societies used to arrange that. But most of that was always about retribution. it was retribution, but also about making sure we all understood what Ubuntu is about, both, because you cannot have Ubuntu living alone. You have Ubuntu within a society that practices Ubuntu. And once you don't abide by those rules within this self-governing institution, then you are no longer part of that society. You're not seen as someone who has Ubuntu, who has embraced Ubuntu. And that was sort of self-governing in a way. And we didn't have police. We were police of each other. We were part and parcel of lawmaking, everything. So what I'm talking about there is a rule by the people, for the people, the genuine one, the authentic one. But you see colonialism coming with a hierarchy in which the Lord has serfs and which has now mothballed into capitalism, where the capitalist has all the power and he has servants, he has laborers now. It's that system which has been in place in our countries, has been left in place, and we are now protecting that system. We are fighting hard to protect that system using these legislators that we have. So the question is, how can legislature work to unite the Africans? That's very difficult because that system was left there to enrich the people who used to rule over us. So no matter what we do, we are continuing to reinforce that system, that oppressive system which was left in place. And we should be actually asking ourselves, are these the laws which are relevant to govern us as the people? Should we be using these same laws? Should we be applying these same laws? Or are there other laws which we think are relevant to our people? So, for instance, right now, South Africa wanted to redistribute the land, but they can't redistribute the land because their masters have left the laws there which are meant to hold the South Africans' hands to not redistribute the land because it's against someone else's wishes or is anti-capitalist, anti the market, now anti-Trump, because Trump is now wading in. But it's the pursuit of whiteness, which is the biggest weakness for our revolutionary leaders. The revolutionary leaders, they fought not just for liberation, but they fought to be part of the system. And that system is the same oppressive system which was oppressing us before liberation. But when they came in, they never bothered about reforming this system, revolutionizing this system. Or you could argue that we sold our souls so that we could be part of that system. Hence, why we can't really revolutionize it. So, I talked about pursuit of whiteness. Everything which is in place in order to put the white supremacy at the top is the pursuit of whiteness. Our wish to want to be like whites, dress like whites, speak like whites, drive big cars like whites, or have houses, the big houses that whites had in Africa. It's the same. It's a pursuit of whiteness. It's a white supremacy system which creates that corruption which Elder Clemroy asked about. If we went back to who we were and dealt with the fear that we are missing out on something, then we will realize that Ubuntu is the system that we have to have in place. I have to remember that my brother has to eat. my other brother there also has to have clothes. My other brother has, or my sister somewhere has to have a house to sleep in with their kids. And if I take that money, what's going to happen to all of those other people? So it's something which we need to address as Africans before we ask the legislatures which the whites have left us to correct our problems. And I know you asked about SWAPO, Brother Carrington. SWAPO came in power like just before the ANC. SWAPO came in power in 1990 before the ANC, but they came in, they had to deal with lots of stuff. They will argue that was the issue. Same thing with ANC. They came in, they say, we had to deal with lots of stuff for our people. But none of them even considered what Kwame Nkrumah had wanted. Kwame Nkrumah had said, liberation now, unity tomorrow. And once they got liberation, it was hoped that we'll move straight into unity. But it still took us time. It took us time. And the South African people themselves, they wanted part. They wanted to feel like now we have the liberation. What is there to show that we've got that liberation? And then, unfortunately, other Africans started flocking to South Africa, looking for opportunities too.
Okay.
And then it became something else. So we need to, as a continent, think of a way in which we can use our legislators for our own purposes, for our own benefit, not for someone else's benefit. At the moment, is set up for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. Please play the AU anthem, then we go to Brother Glenn, then we'll move to other comrades maybe in 2 to 3 minutes time so that we can cover everybody else. Brother Kwame. That was African Union Anthem, the Swahili version of it. That let's make Africa be the tree of life, and we Africans the source of mankind and the source of culture and civilization. So thank you very much, comrades. We are still going on in this conversation. We are coming to the last part of this conversation, and I'd like to listen or hear from everyone else. But out of this conversation, it's very clear that most parliaments in the continent are not even ready for these liberation and unification conversations. And there's a lot that we need to do, including who is the parliamentarian who become the legislator. Are they conscious enough? If they're going through the political party, are the political party pro-Pan-Africans, or they're just political parties for the same? But the element that's also coming in is how do we get the parliamentarians? It's through the people. So it means we need to have progressive citizenry that can then support progressive leaders who can then support progressive laws to unify and liberate Africa. Back to you, Brother Edla Glory, and then I go to Joseph to share with us also what's going on in Grenada in regards to their parliament as well. Elder Glenn? Yes, Elder Glenn, you have managed to unmute yourself. Kindly, Elder Glenn, proceed and share your thinking with us.
I think his microphone may not be working, Brother Pigeon.
Okay, thank you, Brother Kwame, for that reminder, please. Brother Glenn, text on the chat any challenges you are facing. Elder Joseph, back to you in the Caribbean and Grenada. Are the conversations in the Grenada Parliament talking about the unifications of Africans or the liberations, or is there any element of that, and what should be done as well? Thank you.
No, I don't think that the parliament have begun to talk about. The government is talking about engaging or connecting with Africa more than they did before. But I don't think that's part of the agenda. So you have to understand. And I think that may come out there. I'm sorry I joined in. Sometimes it's very difficult. I maybe forced to come, not because I don't want to come, it's competing our interests. Anyway, and then the timing. But I was listening earlier today to a webinar, a recording of a webinar. In fact, I wanted to call you to see if I could get some help in making that available, in which the issue of leadership from a Caribbean context was discussed 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, led by people like Dr. Mary, Marsha Mary Hines and others. And what came out clear of that is that all the institutions, the plantation institutions that were deployed and employed by, during slavery and colonialism, continue to operate, whether it's in tourism. I mean, the mass of the people at the bottom, there's this class, the elite class, the political class, the intellectual class, and so on. Today, the society is structured in a way that have the very majority of people at the bottom waiting for salvation for the people at the top, which is basically a carryover from slavery. Certainly, I would say that, and there have been talk, I have been part of the struggle for constitutional reform, but I don't put all my hopes in that, because unlike Julius Nyerere, he was quoted, I remember a quotation somewhere in my head where he said, others aim at the moon, but we should aim at the village. I think we should start at the village. I think Kabila also, when he ascended to power, the father, one of the things I remember, he said, okay, that democracy will start at the village. This is not always happening by and large throughout the Caribbean, in Grenada. I've been trying to get the new government, for instance, to let us focus on community-led development. Community-led development. But they have talking about economic growth and all this nonsense. This is part of the capitalist. I mean, there's another thing, unless we make a decision that you cannot thrive on the capitalist arrangement. Capitalism presupposes division, it presupposes exploitation and squeezing of people, dehumanizing. And some of the studies we've been doing with Kwame's book,
you would demonstrate in terms of democratic capitalism and so on. So we had to make a decision. So all the systems, the parliamentary system, these are just mimicry for, I mean, I have to laugh because people have wondered why I've not ventured to become political. Like in the politics, like a politician. And I've always said, I'm not going to be a mad person because this is a form of madness. Where people have to behave in a certain way, act in a certain way against the very conscious. And then they also they swear allegiance, up to now we're swearing allegiance to the King of England. Hello? King of England. These are how the system is structured. I remember when we had one of a more progressive prime minister taking on the mantle of prime minister for a short while. I went on radio and said that I really was disappointed with him. Provocatively, that he was swearing to the Queen at the time, knowing that he was a progressive guy. And I was very cool and that kind of thing. Oh, we are independent. Oh, we are part of the Commonwealth and so on. But I said Pakistan, for instance, is a member of the Commonwealth. Zambia is a member of the Commonwealth, but they don't swear allegiance to the Queen at the time. But the guy couldn't understand. So there's a lot of people who feel, because we have your own prime minister and we have your own governor general, or in some cases president, that we are not independent. And I agree with, I think, Brother Coco. I think he was speaking when I came in. After I rejoined, I was disrupted and came back. You were saying about we really just following the old order that was left over for us. Just trying to become more white than anything, like Franz Fanon says. Look at the judges and them. How they act with the wigs. And everything is structured. It's just white, black skin, white mask. We need to get away from that. And maybe we could begin by starting at the village level.
Okay.
Starting at the village level. And living our life daily, not just intellectually. I am what I say on this platform every day, in the sense that I live as an internationalist, as a local person. I engage wherever I'm who I am, and also trying to push the boundaries a little further. So that it is a fact that we don't expect people to change overnight, but we must be pointing in the direction of change continually. That's the only way we will succeed. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder Joseph. Thank you for what you shared with us in regards to the parliament in the Grenada as well. And yes, sisters, we weren't forgotten about you. We will come to you all in that order. I know we had you earlier, and thank you for joining us in advance. Now, permit me to give Brother Carrington, then I'll go to all our sisters here, share with us also what's going on from where their countries are. Brother Carrington.
Yes.
Welcome. Welcome. First is that Rwanda is being perceived to be the only parliament with majority of women, which means Rwanda has over 60% of women in the same parliament,
yes.
Which is somehow bringing the unity of genders in a parliament. Kenya is struggling to meet even a 2/3 gender rule. And I remember the former Chief Justice even declared that the parliament is unconstitutionally constituted and therefore should be disbanded because it doesn't respect the articles of the constitution that demand that our parliament must be in a 2/3 gender rule. As I'm trying to register a political party in Kenya here, one of the requirements by the registered political party when I presented the names of my founding members is that we must have a third women in that founding of the party, but also beyond that in the running of the party activities as party officials. Do you think even at national level, the parliaments have actually united the people? And beyond that is that what do you think is the failure of parliaments towards pushing for what you want from the continent? You can speak from Kenyan experience, but also generally share your views as what you think as well. Thank you, Brother Carrington.
So yes, thank you very much, Brother Pigeon. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. I'll go quickly in the interest of time. Now, on the question of women, and this is an International Women's Day, so it says a lot about us. I should add that we did not start with submissions from our sisters, but we will improve, and because we must.
Sorry, brother PG, brother, can I come in there?
Yes,
It's not for lack
yes.
of trying, please. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Um, Parliaments are meant to be representative. 50% of the population of the continent is women. It is very, very, therefore, quite simple that there are two things that are happening. One, given the huge skews in representation in the continent, women are not politically active, or men are continuously using institutions to disadvantage women, or a combination of both is happening. One of the most important elections in Africa was the Liberian one, the election of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. The women wanted Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to win the election. Their husbands, because they are big fans of football, wanted His Excellency President George Weah to win. Uh, what the women did was very amazing. They organized, they sat down, they got careful. They even convinced their husbands and their sons who could vote and their brothers to vote for Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And whenever somebody became particularly stubborn, their ideas suddenly found their way into a black hole. They disappeared. So their ability to vote was curtailed, and eventually, His Excellency President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected. I think there's a stronger role for women in politics to calm down this excitable, violent nature of men. We have tried men for a long while. The men we have tried have conducted civil wars and corruption. Maybe it's some time to think radically about our governance systems. I would also like to talk about Pan-Africanism, particularly parliaments in the past. So parliaments, as I see them, are not particularly foreign institutions. They are foreign adaptations of very, very old African, Asian, European, West American institutions. These institutions we like to call the Council of Elders, right? People have to meet. Not everybody can. Not everybody can. Therefore, there has to be some sort of defer to a group of people in a society to meet and discuss the problems and the opportunities of that society. That is the important question of the Pan-African, the Council of Elders. I would like to point out, I am normally very fascinated by the Kotoko of the Ashanti, a very old, very functional institution that even had the capacity to remove their Santehene, because if the Santehene is not playing, is not guiding the community well, not listening to advice, then he ought to be removed. And I'm sure such similar structures existed. And even amongst my parents, my mother's people, the Kikuyu, there was actually no king, no chief, no leader. All authority stopped at the Council of Elders. So we know that these institutions of representational governance are inherent to the continent. Now the question is, how can we adapt them for the modern world? How can we adapt our constitutional parliaments to be more reflective of the modern world? There are two things that I see, successes and failures. Parliaments in Africa, well-conducted parliaments in Africa do a very, very good job occasionally. Not perfect, but a good job. So I would really like to point out the impeachment of Jacob Zuma. I think that was a good thing. I think the ANC, the party system of South Africa, is a good thing if not weaponized against the people. That the institution is bigger than the individual. And actually, this is one of Kenya's failures. Politicians outlast parties in Kenya. not the other way around. It's very hard to institutionalize a political party in Kenya, to turn it into an institution with ideology that can outlast you. It is one of the things that is very important, to allow for ideas to back themselves into society. Now, the problem, of course, is that the ANC has now become captured by capital, and we need to have discussions on how to prevent this. I would like to really zoom out very quickly to the Pan-African Parliament. We have been discussing national parliaments, a little bit of Kenya. I don't want to reprise the situation in Kenya, but the Pan-African Parliament is also a little bit problematic. The first thing, it is not integrated within the structure of the African Union. So it has very little influence on executive decisions of the African Union. That is a problem, because it means that the authority of the African Union and the Pan-African Parliament are separate. And although there is some talk of coordination, closer coordination between the two institutions, the two Pan-African institutions, this needs to be strengthened. I think that when a Kenyan, a Ghanaian, an Egyptian, a Congolese vote for somebody who represents them to this Pan-African Parliament, consciously and aware that they're sending somebody to the Pan-African Parliament, a lot about the politics of the continent can be transformed. Just like representation, local representation has transformed politics a little bit in Kenya and drastically in South Africa and Tanzania. So I think this could help strengthen actually the authority of the African Union. I'm a believer in not upsetting institutions all the time. We can't discontinue the African Union after 20 years and say, no, it has failed, let us get something new. And then after 10 years, we have failed, let us get something new. It is very, very, Toto is walking back and forth. We need something where we remove the weaknesses and strengthen the institutional capacities of these institutions. If we repeat this over a period of 20 and 30 years, I think something interesting could come up. So thank you very much. Those are my submissions.
Thank you, Brother Carrington. Permit me to go to the sisters, Brother Kogo, so that I can come back to you. Sister Tapua, what's going on in Zimbabwe? Sister Tapua?
Not much in connection with legislature that is aimed at unifying Africa. We don't seem as Zimbabwe to see the rest of Africa, I think. The most we can see is SADC, since we're the chairperson this year. But it doesn't even look like there's a concerted effort to make SADC work for the good of everyone within the region. Because we have, for example, South Africa struggling to see itself, or South Africans struggling to see, I don't want to say that. I mean, the working class South Africans failing to understand what is happening around them. So I think before we even go to...
Sorry, Satapua. So do you mean Southern Africans or South Africans?
South Africans. Because what has happened is, because of the nature of South Africa as a country in the region, and the differences between how the economy in South Africa has performed relative to the region, and the fact that South Africa has always been invaded, even during the colonial period, by people coming to work in South Africa. For the Black South African, they see the movement of Blacks more than they see the movement of other races into South Africa. So they, because of the nature of colonization and the fact that we're split up, we seem to perpetuate this division, which is not going to help us think of unity. Because at the same time, as we're thinking of maybe, I mean, look at the South Africans trying to deal with major political party that's been captured, trying to find yourself a job, trying to feed your family, and then to ask people to think of Africa as a whole, or even just the neighborhood. It's a jump that we cannot expect to bridge by talking. Like from our meeting on Thursday, it's people looking at what makes an immediate difference to their lives. So, talking about the African Parliament and talking about all these things, if you went to an ordinary person who's trying to put bread on the table, they would ask you pertinent questions. How is this going to make a difference to me now? And I think that's where we want to be able to market this whole idea as people who are able to analyze and try and look into the future and see what works. We know what will work, but we cannot make it work for everybody unless we bring everyone with us. And the only way to make everybody come with us is answer the very questions that they're trying to grapple with. Food on the table, a job. If the African Union is not going to be an answer to those immediate problems, then we will take forever to get there. I think we need to find a way to package this so that people can see that part of their everyday problems are going to be solved by Africa being one place and all of us sharing as we know we can with Ubuntu. I think I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. Sister Chisomo? Yes, Sister Chisomo?
Hello. Where do I begin? I hardly hear leaders or the general public amongst Malawian discussing Pan-Africanism. Because there's a lot going on in the country for them to even start talking about things outside it. So that's a difficult one to begin. They do hear Malema. At least they can cheer up Malema here and there. And now Traore. And I think with the YouTube, they're beginning slowly to start talking about other countries. In the southern region itself, again, not much happening. Every country seems to be doing its own thing, but again, between Zambians and Malawians, there's a lot of communication. I don't know about the governments, but the general public, there's a lot of discussions that goes on as if it were one country. So, but in terms of parliament itself, because in Malawi we elect a president separately. So when we say we've got election, what we mean is we're going to choose a president. So we don't vote for a party, but a president. But maybe when it comes to the MPs, then they kind of represent a party, because with the president, we even have independent presidents. So I don't know how that would work if an independent president won who has no party. But as we've seen before, presidents have fallen out with their own party and set up a new party whilst they're in government. And then MPs have changed parties whilst they're in government. So a lot of mess going on. So the parties as well, I don't know about all this multi-party stuff that's dividing people so badly that it's now becoming so violent, extremely violent. There are incidents every day now. And in terms of legislation, again, because of these party divisions and party lines, our speaker is from the same ruling party, the leader of the House ruling party, that one is a ruling party. So they've captured the whole system. And we've never seen a most corrupt government ever. They do it openly. About money being exchanged in parliament, like Brother Kwame was saying, I don't know at what point that takes place, but we hear it takes place, but from outside, from the private sector into parliament to influence this and that. And also this government has a habit of, since from the beginning, I remember, if you will be aware, that we had a rerun of elections because they said the other people rigged, therefore we need to run them again. And the guy says, "Oh well, go ahead."
Okay.
And then for them to win, because they knew that if they did it the same way, the other guy will win again. So to stop him from winning, the other parties, let's say the opposition, then came together to form an alliance, but have one leader on the ballot. So there were 9 parties. In Malawi, by the way, we have up to 60 parties. But anyway, so these 9 parties came together, these 9 leaders or parties leaders came together, and then they agreed that one will be on the ballot. Sorry, I'm laughing. One will be on the ballot, and then the guy who died will lead the next 5 years. So one will lead first 5 years, and then the second one will lead the next 5 years. I don't know how they were going to work that out without elections. So anyway, halfway through the journey, the first one then says, we are running again the next 5 years. That's when they fell out. In the end, somebody died.
Sister Chisomo,
Hello.
are even those parties Pan-African in any nature?
No, I just said Malawi doesn't discuss Pan-Africanism.
That's a long journey.
It doesn't. Well, we are having problems organizing ourselves. We are so power hungry within. How do we then get somebody to share the power from outside?
We are 1 minute to the top line, Sister Chisomo. So playboard will just wind up as we come towards the end of the meeting.
I suppose that's as far as I can say as regards to the Pan-Africanism. But like I said, with YouTube, the general public is starting to discuss or to hear what other countries are discussing and about One Africa and all that stuff. So maybe it will pick up at some point. Maybe when the new government comes in, maybe that will come up, but not at this point.
Okay, thank you. Sister Ida, you haven't spoken. A minute or any minute you want to say? Sister Ida, I know we are coming to an end of this.
Well, I would like to thank Brother Carrington for having brought in the women, because though I said I didn't understand, I couldn't chair because I didn't really understand politics enough. Before he started talking about women, the one thing that in my mind was that maybe we need to be dividing parliaments into half women, half men. And I'm not saying that women aren't corrupt, but I'm saying that we need to have more of a balance in all parliaments. And I don't think that parliaments necessarily need to be speaking English. There are now interpreters, computer interpreters, all those sorts of things. So I think that there should be people from all over the country. It doesn't matter which country it is, both men and women chosen, and they should do their 4 years or whatever.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sister Eda. But I think you have raised a question even as we come to an end of this, is that even parliaments are not liberated. You are talking about the language of instruction. Even the speaker is still putting on the wigs, the colonial wigs. Even all the arrangement, I think they borrow directly from the whites. So there's also some element of the parliament not even being liberated itself. Our time is up, but I want to get to Brother Kwame if we can allow Elder Glenn, who has been struggling to speak, to say something.
It's very small thing. Just to say to Sister Chizomo, this idea of sharing leadership or elected position is right out of Tony Blair's and Gordon Brown's playbook in the UK, which didn't go quite well. I just wonder if I could ask, there should be a discussion, I think, on the issue of corruption, because I think that it's becoming more of a catchphrase or a throwaway line. We're not seriously discussing it and seriously looking for solutions. So I would ask if some time could be provided to discuss corruption. I'm willing to speak on it, but we just can't continue to use it as some kind of byline. Thank you.
Yeah, we did discuss corruption, I think 1 week or 2 weeks ago, especially when you're looking at the judiciary. And the presentation was done by a lawyer from Malawi, who is a human rights lawyer. So,
Chair, Ali.
No problem, but we can still look at it as well. Brother Kwame, it's 2 minutes past our time. Please, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Pigeon. So thank you all for coming. May I remind us all about a few things. So in terms of representation of women, the top country, as has been mentioned, is Rwanda, which has over 60% of parliamentary seats. South Africa, 45.9, Namibia, 44.2. Now, the lowest, the countries with the lowest representation of women in Africa are Lesotho. Brother Kuko will probably have to say a bit more about that. They have only 1.5%. Chad is 11.3. Mali, that we've been, Mad, Charlie, Burkina Faso, we've been talking about a lot. Out of those three, the AES, Chad and Mali, Chad has 11.3 and Mali has 12.2. So there are Africans, Algeria has only 15.5. So we have African countries that have very low representation of women, which means the domination of men. However good or bad men are, I don't know of any man who dropped from the sky. All men I know of came into this world from the womb of a woman. So if men are whatever they are, I think we should be asking the women also, how come your men are what they are? So that is the other point I want. Then the other point I want us to make is Brother Carrington. I think maybe not the only one, but he's the one that spoke most about the Pan-African Parliament. I know Brother Pigeon, you did as well. I think that the Pan-African Parliament is a significant step for us, Pan-Africanists, because now we don't have to create one, it's already there. And so what we need to ask ourselves, which we haven't much in this discussion, out of which perhaps an action plan could have come out, is what do we intend to do with PAP, that's PAP, the Pan-African Parliament? In terms of it's being integrated, which Brother Carrington mentioned. So Brother Carrington was of the view that it's not integrated, but there are those who are also of the view that it is integrated into the African Union structure, because the AU established it in 2004 as one of its organs. And its aim was to represent people of Africa and enhance the participation of African citizens in the democratic process of the continent. So the argument that it is technically part of the AU, but the problem, I think, as Brother Carrington has rightly identified, the problem is that it serves as a consultative body and an advisory forum rather than having the power to pass binding legislation for the entire continent. So it can't pass laws that are binding on the entire continent in the same way as the federal government of the US can pass a law that is binding on all states, federal laws, or in the same way as the United Kingdom can pass laws that is binding on Scotland, England, Wales, and so on. So that is what is lacking. And Pan-Africanists, and this is where we have a role to play. What do we intend to do to make sure that this changes? Because PAP is there, is drafting model laws. So if we think there are things wrong on the continent, don't you think that we should be drafting or suggesting model laws ourselves to PAP? So I think we have a lot to do, Pan-Africanists, which we are not doing. One of the things also we have discussed in the past, which I think falls neatly under the African legislature, is a question of an African constitution, by which we mean that we need a constitution for the entire continent, how Africa must be governed under a new constitution that is continental. So that is something that there are lawyers in our midst, there are people with legislative experience and background. CSG needs to look at how we can marshal them to come together and create a constitution which we can take to a continental constitutional conference, in which those who be represented will not be the new colonialists. We don't want them there. What we need will be the nationalities themselves. In other words, the nations themselves, the Kikuyus, the Igbos, the Evers, the Hausas, they should be those who are represented, actual people, not the neo-colonial institutions and figures and so on. And so then the nationalities can pass the constitution and then ask their presidents. And every president is a son or daughter of a nationality in Africa. And they will not disobey their stools or their kings or their traditional authorities. They will do as they are told. And then they will then order them to do what they have asked. The suppression of our nationalities and their cultural institutions is one of the problems that we face. Because at the end of the day, all that we've discussed can be summed up as the domination of neo-colonialism. And as the Pigeon has identified towards the end, the legislature is also not liberated because of neo-colonialism. So I think there's a lot of work there for us to do. Pan-Africanists, we have a lot of work to do. So we'll bring the meeting to a close now. Let me remind us of our session for next week. Just to remind you, our sessions are in 4 strands, which we try and do one every week. And they are on continental African governance, continental economics, continental development, and continental liberation, which is in line with our strategic goal of African liberation, unification, and development. So today's session, for instance, is on African governance. Our session for next week will be, which is the 15th of, which will be on the 15th of March, which is next week, Saturday, will be on PIDA. That's a program for infrastructure development in Africa. So that is what we'll be discussing. Brother Pigeon, as usual, we thank him so much. He will put together the poster with some content. And if you or anyone can speak on the topic, please let us know. Let Brother Pigeon know. If you know of anyone, again, let him know. What we want is for Africans themselves to be speaking on these issues for us. So we try and put the program further ahead so that speakers can come forward. When we did it for the February sessions, some speakers came forward, some spoke, some didn't speak. So that is that. We are happy to record you if you can't be available on Saturday, the time we meet. We're happy to agree and plan to record you so we can play your session during the Saturday session. So we will do in PIDA, PIDA, that's a program for infrastructure development in Africa. On 15th and on the 22nd, we will look at liberation, and that will be reforming relationships with IFs standing for International Financial Institutions. We'll be looking at that. And then on the last Saturday we will return to governance again with implementing continent-wide policies. So to summarize, then, our session for next week, Saturday 15th, will be program for infrastructure development in Africa. Thank you all very much. That is it from us. We thank you all for coming. We thank Brother Pigeon for chairing. We thank Brother Carrington for stepping in. We thank Sister Ida for always being our conscience and reminding us, and so on and so forth. So thank you all, and have a wonderful week. Unless Brother Pigeon has something else to add.
Thank you all. I don't want to take more time, but I think there's one thing that is coming, Brother Kwame, from this conversation. That one is that even where we have progressive, so-called progressive political parties, we can still not have them being in the parliaments to actually be progressive enough to advance progressive agendas, which means then there's also a need to work on civic education for conscious Africans, or to conscientize Africans on Pan-Africanism, so that they can support leaders who are Pan-African or who are conscious Pan-African wise, who can then go in parliament and push for these bills or policies for liberation, rather than bribing the current lot of leaders who are actually already spoiled. So I think that's a challenge that we need to brainstorm and see how do we come up with such programs or frameworks to help advance this. Just that I thought is a takeaway that we need to note and see how we can have another conversation on laying that foundation moving forward. Not much. Yes,
Brother Pigeon, you are right, because at the end of the day, you remember, a brother from Sierra Leone drew our attention to the fact that we were not talking about Pan-Africanism. The most popular programs in Ghana, where I come from, are not in English; they are in the local language. And so Malawians will not understand what Ghanaians are talking about. Ghanaians, and Brother Sister Chizomo has told us that most of the programs in Malawi are in the local language. They have very vibrant social media, but they are not in English. So I can understand anything they are saying. And they are not discussing Pan-Africanism. And so you are right. What do we do? What should we do? And how do we do it? Those are legitimate questions that we need to address. So thank you.
Thank you very much, comrades. Then let's have this conversation, probably the part 2 of this moving forward. In the next time we'll design it. But for now, thank you for all your contribution, your time. And let's meet next Saturday or this Thursday as we continue the consciousness reading, or even Tuesday for our Swahili class. Have a lovely evening to you all. Goodbye.
Goodbye and good night.
Asante sana.